Welcome to Lawyers Who Care, the video show podcast that highlights attorneys who go above and beyond for their clients. And on each episode, we will meet a new lawyer and they will share stories of when they went beyond legal counsel for the benefit of their client. My name is Andrew Samalin. I'm the principal of Samalin Wealth, a nationally recognized wealth management firm for lawyers, their firms, and their clients. And let's applaud lawyers who care and learn from them. Today, I have a very, very special guest. Eric Shapiro Renfroe. He is a Queens-based criminal defense attorney, and Eric has been practicing criminal law since 2017 and most notably handled the case of Steve Lopez, who was one of the teens charged in the 1989 Central Park jogger case. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Eric, what brought you to the profession?
So my parents are both attorneys. My dad's a criminal defense attorney still practicing. My mom's a former prosecutor. And then she was the inaugural director of the Queens Child Advocacy Center. And now she focuses on family law. And I guess I graduated college and I was, didn't know what else to do, but figured I'd try my hand at this. And it seems like it was a good fit for me, thankfully.
And professionally, what brought you down into the criminal defense world as opposed to all of the other specialties that an attorney might choose?
I grew up around it. I think that it's the most interesting. I mean, there's definitely other types of law where you can make more money, but usually when people ask me about my job, what I tell them is that there are days that are extremely rewarding. There are days that are extremely challenging, but there's never a day where I'm bored. So I couldn't imagine, not going to court. I couldn't imagine not interacting with people. And I feel like a lot of, I could probably be making a lot more money, if I was doing another type of law, but I'd probably have a lot less fun.
And, you've been practicing more than a week and a half for sure. How long have you been in practice?
I basically went out immediately into private practice when I was admitted in 2017. So
Gotcha.
April 2017.
So this Central Park jogger case in its first iteration, how old were you when that happened?
I'd have to double check. I don't think I was alive when they were arrested. I think they were arrested in 1989. I was born in 1990. So I was not alive when they were arrested and not conscious or cognizant when they took a plea. I basically learned about, I'd heard of it, obviously, because it's a very famous case, but I would say that growing up around this, there's a lot of people with fascination with true crime and, watching those type of shows. Not me, I knew of it by the name, but I didn't know too much about it other than that until, I was dealing with Steve's case.
And so when dealing with Steve's case, how did you negotiate the decades of no, and how did you turn that into a successful outcome?
So I think the real issue, which people are not aware of, and there was a push to change it, which, the governor vetoed, not that the legislation itself was perfect, but there's an issue that was referenced in a Court of Appeals case, People v. Tiger, which is that there's a general proposition that if you plead guilty, you can't later do what's called a 440, which is it's similar to appeal, but it's based on, sometimes facts outside the record and later say that you're innocent. And so, for anyone who's watching this that doesn't know, because I think that Steve's story was, for whatever reason, not talked about, and it's always the Central Park Five. It's always the Central Park Five.
By the way, Eric, can I stop you just
Yeah.
for folks that may not know, for either younger attorneys and younger viewers, can you share the Central Park Five story and then Steve's, how Steve falls into that story?
So the Central Park Five only became the Central Park Five when they were exonerated. Before they were the Central Park Five, there were, I believe, at least 8 young men arrested, and at least 6 of whom were indicted, one of which was Mr. Lopez. And Mr. Lopez, as I think the case is very famous. They've made shows about it. They've they made documentaries about it. It's pretty shameful. There was really no evidence that these kids had done anything except for some of them had given confessions, which based on we now know to be coerced. And there's another legal principle. There was a case, People v. Bruton. It's a Supreme Court case, which says that you can't use this statement of a co-defendant against, a defendant unless that person's testifying themselves. So there were actually going to be 3 separate trials. So the first 3 went to trial, blue trial. The next 2 went to trial, blue trial. Steve's case was separated because Steve had not made any statements. The only statements that implicated Steve were made by the 5, which could not be utilized. And so he was getting a separate trial. I also couldn't imagine being his lawyer at that time, because you've just seen how these other 2 trials have gone. So Steve made, what I just view as a business decision. He could go to trial, and seeing the outcome, or he took a plea deal, which led to him doing significantly less time than who went on to be known as the 5. And what happened thereafter is, I think based on that principle in People v. Tiger, when they re-examined these cases, they vacated the convictions of the 5 who'd gone to trial. And there was kind of like just basically, I don't know if they overlooked it or just swept it to a side or thought they didn't need to address it because they felt he had pled guilty. But they just totally didn't do anything about Steve's case, which is, pretty crazy to me. But, and that's how I was able to, meet Steve, and thankfully we fixed that.
And here we are decades later.
Yeah, they were exonerated.
You mean the 5?
The 5 were exonerated 20 years before him. They became millionaires 10 years before him, before people even knew his name, before he was exonerated. And he basically just had to watch, knowing he did nothing wrong. He had people not know his story and become the only person with a conviction rising out of that case. It's pretty crazy. And I think he went to several lawyers and they told him, that there's nothing he could do because he pled guilty. And then he came to me, and I knew about that case, but figured we should take a shot at it.
And how long did the shot take?
He came to me, I think, in December of 2019, and we were kind of waylaid by COVID because I reached out to a lot of the DA's offices now have basically conviction review units. So I didn't want to just send a letter during COVID and have it languish on someone's desk. So it probably took me several months before I could reach someone in the office to confirm that they were there. But I think that I met him in December 19, and he was exonerated on July 22nd. I think July 25th, 2022, if I remember correctly.
And you're 2 years into being a practicing attorney.
5 years. 5 years. I was admitted in 2017. Oh yeah, he came to me 2 years in. Yeah.
Right. That's what. Hold on, but what do you do for an encore?
I don't know. I've been joking with my dad. I've gotten 1 murder conviction overturned. I've obviously had this case. I think I might have peaked. I peaked too early.
So, now that you're a longtime practitioner, 10 years in, you're coming up on 10 years in, what advice would you give to folks, to listeners, to newer attorneys, to attorneys that might be, think that they're climbing up a hill that might be insurmountable?
I guess on this one, I guess I just went with my gut. I would say that exonerations are hard, and that I was lucky in a certain sense that the path had been laid out before me by the 5. We already had their recantations. We knew the statements were false. They'd already recanted anything they said about Steve. We had the DNA. So I was lucky in that regard for that one. But I would say, as lucky as I was, other people obviously didn't see it, didn't think anything could be done, and didn't take it. So I just, if you see that something is wrong, it's probably worth fighting. And I'm glad it had a happy ending in this case.
Sage advice. I'd like to thank, my guest, Eric Shapiro Renfroe, for joining us today. Eric, so that folks can get in touch with you. And by the way, I understand that you have taken down your website and things like that. So, it's almost like we have to go into the jungle to find you, kind of like Kurt from, Apocalypse Now.
I'm foolish. I got advice after Steve was exonerated, around the time we knew it was going to happen, that I should make a website so people can find me. But then I just realized, like, it wasn't, listen, I didn't have a website when he found me. And right. I feel like it's almost like a weird thing. It's not, the website just becomes like a shrine to the most public cases I've had. But if you Google me, my number comes up.
Gotcha.
And here to fight, here to try and help people if I can.
Perfect. This has been the Lawyers Who Care video show podcast that highlights attorneys who go above and beyond for their clients. And Eric is just the perfect example of that. If you're an attorney or know one who does go above and beyond, feel free to reach out to us, 914-666-6600. Eric, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.